Satellites?
A satellite represents a journey, information gathering, this journey around the Earth.
Satellite Haiku. My name's Milo.
I'm Sean.
No, I'm doing really well. I started a painting late last night. I felt like I had this commission piece, and I think my friend who commissioned it really wanted it before Christmas, so I was feeling the pressure.
Yeah.
And there's some special thing about being an ADHD procrastinator where this rising prickly pressure where you just feel kind of bad in the back of your neck and you just feel this urge to get it off your plate or off your shoulders, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that bursting, that sort of freedom feeling of when you get started and you can sort of say, fuck you to the pressure, you know?
Yeah. Well, there's a kind of paralysis that happens with that ADHD stuff where you're itching because you're not doing it, but then also sometimes you're paralyzed and you can't do it. Like you're just not, like it's a thing you don't really want to do on some level, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so you feel like all this anxiety because you're not getting it done, but somehow that's where the procrastination comes from. Somehow you're still, you still can't motivate yourself to actually do it.
It's true.
So it doesn't sound like that's the case with this particular painting.
I want to
but
clarify
sometimes,
because I do know on Thanksgiving, my friend who commissioned the piece, she told me that she listens to the pod sometimes. Listens
nice.
to Sally. Yeah, so if she'll hear that, I'm really excited to make the breakthrough. But and the other thing is like you've seen, I saw this really beautiful mini documentary about a Scottish sculptor, and he worked in large pieces of stone, maybe like over 6 feet tall blocks of stone. And he talked about how his journey with each piece, he started out, he was all excited. He would go to the quarry and he would pick the piece and he'd be like, I can see inside the piece what I want to make. And
like the Michelangelo thing, you just have to chip away what's not the sculpture.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
He'd bring it back to his studio. He'd start working and it was this decline into despair is what he described. There was a point where his hand was like wrapped in a rag and every time he hit the hammer, it hurt more. And he was crying and he just thought like, this is the stupidest job. Why would anyone take this? You know, and then he would have this breakthrough where, 3 weeks later, he'd be sanding it with like 200 grit sandpaper. And he'd be like, oh my God, I did it again. Like I made it through the decline into despair. Like, what is that called in the story arc when it's like riches to rags.
It's
to
like
riches.
you would go to that, he'd have that all is lost moment at the bottom of that curve.
And understanding that as an artist and having been through it a few times and having kind of, or not a few times, a lot of times, like it's fun to sort of play with it and almost like talk to yourself being like, this is where you're doing that thing where you pretend to be like not into it. And it's really just that you're afraid to get started and shut the fuck up. And you know what I mean? Like there is that kind of, at least it was back to that point when I said to that guy that wanted to hire me and I said, I'm too old and experienced to negotiate my rates. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like same thing with the artist block. It's like, I'm too old and experienced to like not
to
see
let
this.
To let this stop me again, I know what this is kind of thing.
But like,
it's you again.
But yeah, exactly. But last night, for instance, these are ancient things that come up that are 20 years from my divorce. In my divorce, I lost my garage on the street. Like I had a garage that I had turned into a studio.
Right.
Like I sat with a friend and we drywalled it and added insulation and added a swamp cooler. And I lost the garage and I've never I've done a lot of things that were not looking for. I've looked for studios. I've thought about trying to, But anyway, so last night I'm outside. I'm working outside. There's no mosquitoes.
Yeah.
And it was not supposed to rain, but it said like 12% chance. And then right as I got everything lined up and found all the materials and cleaned all my tools, it started to rain.
Oh.
And I was outside and I was like, shit, man, like I can't.
Come on.
Come on, like I'm right.
I mean, it's one thing that you can typically count on in Arizona is like it's not going to rain, right?
This time of year. So anyway, and it's like the only window of rain. It's like not going to rain for the next 21 days. So
somebody said that 12% chance means like it's 100% chance of raining on 12% of the city for 12% of the day or something.
Yeah,
like that.
those numbers.
You got like the target. You were right in the bullseye.
Yeah, and I had this little radar thing that shows me the green dots moving across, the green lumps. and they were just coming right for the neighborhood, like straight out of Yuma, like boom, just hit my neighborhood, you know. So tiny little things, but it was funny that it just right when I was ready to start, it started raining, and so what I did was I waited until it stopped, and in the dark with lights on, I did the beginning thing, which is all I needed to get started. So anyway,
yeah, cool. I started working on that story yesterday, the screenplay or I don't know. I was thinking like book, screenplay. I actually thought about doing it as a radio, like a podcast, serial podcast thing, because I thought that would be super easy. You don't need cameras or anything.
It's true, yeah. Huh.
Record the voices. So I might still write it like that. But right now I'm writing it like a screenplay. I have the first. I outlined a better ending in the document that I shared with you, and I started writing the opening scene.
That's
I
awesome,
made pretty
man.
good and I outlined kind of like the next couple of scenes. You ever watch the movie Don't Look Up?
Yes. Yeah.
So I kind of envisioned it a little bit like that, where it's like most of the characters play it pretty straight. Like if you watch that movie, Leonardo DiCaprio's character and then Kate DiBiase, the woman, what's her name, the actress, anyway, who discovered the comet, right? Mm-hmm. Like they play their parts completely straight. Like they're not playing for comedy at all. It's just the situations they're in
are ridiculous.
Are increasingly stupid.
Yeah, totally.
And the obstacles they encounter are increasingly stupid. But most of the people in like the characters are written. I mean, Adam McKay is such a great writer. He wrote the screenplay. David Sirota wrote the story. But that's what's fun about that. Like the situations are ridiculous, but the characters are playing themselves very seriously for the most part.
Yeah,
I think Jonah Hill as like the president's younger brother, who's also like the chief of staff or whatever. Meryl Streep's the president.
Oh, right.
Like Jonah Hill is one of the only characters who's kind of he's a little bit over the edge into comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's good at that. So
I'm going to say
that edge.
I'm going to say this out loud on Satellite Haiku so that I have to follow up. But I totally think would love to, and I'm going to use the word need to have a project to collaborate. I would love to do it with you on where.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never written a screenplay, and I have screenplay.com or something on my thing. But I think it would be really fun to do even to do a shorter, or like what we could aim for is a trailer.
Yeah.
Like let's aim for like to get that, plus you can keep working on the thing, but I would love to collaborate with you and have like a regular meeting time that was aside.
Well, would you want to collaborate on the writing? Because I'd love to share bits and pieces back with you, and then kind of
sure. I've never done that, so I think it would be wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think like if we envision it as a film, then that's more in your wheelhouse of like how would we make this visual, right? Like
for sure. Yeah.
If I write it that way, as opposed to saying like a book or a radio drama or a podcast serial or something like that, like either of those latter two would be like, that would kind of exclude you a little bit more, I think, right? Because writing it as a film is more in your, so like I guess what I'm proposing is maybe we should keep going as a screenplay.
Yes.
Because that's definitely more in your domain of like, what you'd be interested in contributing.
Sure, and I mean, to be honest, I would love to just work. Like I've always thought about being in a writer's room, and this would be like a collaboration like that. I have to explain one thing. So what am I watching? Oh, I'm watching this show Landman, which is Taylor Sheridan. And he has he has like a huge library of this sort of similar. They all kind of fall under like a template of this character. Like Yellowstone and Landman and Lioness and he's written all of the Sicario. There's like drug dealers and army guys and like there's policemen and gangsters and stuff.
What's Landman on? What's it streaming on?
It's Paramount Plus and it's Billy Bob Thornton and
I've seen trailers for that. We don't have Paramount Plus, but
I got Paramount Plus for
South Park, right?
South Park, yeah. And it's like you could.
Yeah, I should get rid of one of our services and trade it for Paramount.
I'm really mad at Bill Maher, so I'm thinking of getting rid of HBO Max because that's why I
There's
got.
so many good shows on HBO, though.
I know it's true, but I'm really mad at him because of what he said about socialism last time. So anyway, but let's go back to my point. So I'm watching the show, and I'm watching. So the show is about Billy Bob Thornton's character is this bitter. He was a billionaire oil man, but there's tons of oil people. Like for every one that becomes a billionaire, there's 100 that lose all their money. That's what he says. He tries to explain it. So he's going around, and now he's been hired as a general manager of this independent oil company. And so he just drives around sort of solving problems and dealing with all the shit that comes up with being an oil producer. Yeah. And this lawyer, a young lawyer, comes down to sort of defend them in some case. And both of them have very sharp, mean, incredibly fast dialogue that shreds the person's argument, you know, like, and it just, it's
like that Aaron Sorkin style or what. Actually, he's more long monologue kind of sermons, but yeah, I know what you mean.
These are like diatribes or like these pithy, like real, like where someone, like at one point he goes, okay, well, you need to write up a contract for us to get the mineral rights to frack this land because we got to go sideways and then push in. And she goes, she has this like moral conflict. She's like, oh, I heard in school, like, isn't that the worst thing for the environment? And he goes on this long rant about how we're addicted to oil. Everything you touch, everything you put on your lips, everything you know, like your clothes, he goes, it's all based on petroleum. The bigger problem is that we don't have something to replace it with when we run out, which is happening. And that's why we're fucking fracking. So like he does this long thing. And I'm always like, damn, like I don't think I can write like that. And then I stumbled across, back in the pandemic, we were playing, it's like sort of a long story, but back in the pandemic, we were playing Wordle with my daughter, 2 daughters and my mom, and me and my wife, like 5 of us. We would just like share our Wordle things. And I started writing these very silly, I came up with 2 characters, mouse and fairy, were my starter words. And then it takes place in this, you know, pre-Cortez, you know, valley in Mexico where these tribes are doing sacrifices. And I'm trying to like explain why theocracies would sort of devolve into where they're doing blood sacrifice and how, and 2 of the characters are like trying to move people toward veganism and using symbolic things. And I read it and I'm like, who the fuck wrote that? Like, it's so complex and I'm drawing on all these weird historical things. And I'm like, I don't remember actually like thinking those things, but I wrote them. You know what I mean? So like
I totally know I know that feeling of like unearthing something that I wrote a long time ago and going like kind of being a little impressed with it. Like, and I was like, man, I didn't see anything in this at the time. And obviously I kind of abandoned it. So I didn't think it was, you know, like I wasn't motivated to keep going, but actually this is pretty good.
Yeah. Or at least,
but there's that second part too, where it's like you don't recognize it as your own work, like
And I'm not entirely,
and maybe that's even part of what draws you to being willing to say that it's good, because like it's hard to toot your own horn a little bit, right? So like the fact that you don't even recognize it as your own work kind of allows you to go, actually, it's not that bad.
In the back of my mind, I'm also thinking, if someone said, hey, could you keep that going and keep writing that serial? Like, I'm not entirely sure that I could. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
like it's
exactly.
I wrote like 37 of them.
Like, where did that even come from? Right? Yeah. No, I totally understand what you're saying, because like you're in that headspace, like whatever reason, there's something flowing through you in that moment. It's like, could I channel that again? Yeah. It's not even like. It's almost like you're letting it come through you as much as you are creating it, right? And
it's true.
And so like there's that's the potentially missing piece when you think about returning to that. You're like, all right, I could try to work on this, but I don't know if that same thing will flow through me again, because there was obviously something, you know, I was partly the player, but I was also partly the instrument for this.
Yeah, and that's it. It points to a bigger question about creativity and being an artist, or being a prolific, generative artist. Like one of my sort of fears is that, and it's proven by the fact that I haven't finished 13 novels, but one of my fears is that I just don't have It's not that I don't have the discipline, because I can sit down and make a yoga book that's 600 pages long, and lay it out. So I can like get into a project and like grind on it until it's done and make sure it's good. But it's more the fact that like I don't really have the interest in developing a character over 400 pages. I've never done it, but I think I don't have the interest. You know what I mean? Like, and that scares me. Like the idea that like,
I think that's been my struggle too. It's like I'll lose interest in a thing, and kind of like what you're describing with that thing that you worked on. Like even that that thing you just described. Like at some point you stopped working on it, right? So what was that? And I sometimes I feel that acutely when I'm working on something. Like I've gotten 30,000, 50,000, 60,000 words into like a novel, right? And then just sort of come to this, and you hear a lot of writers, they hit this, where it's just like, I'm not interested in this story anymore. I don't know where it's going. I'm not interested in these characters. Like, I don't care about any of this anymore. And, and part of that is like, the ADHD thing where there's some other thing itching at me, like, oh, as I've been writing this, I've been thinking about a better story, right? Like it's been coming to me as I'm working on this, and it's starting, and now I want to work on that other thing, right? So that's, and like that's not a unique thing. I hear that a lot you hear writers talk about that, and you need to push through that, but I just have never been able to, because it's kind of what you're describing. Like it's that loss of enthusiasm for the thing you're working on. It's like, oh, what I don't even like this character anymore. Like not interested in taking them any further, right? And I don't know how to get through that.
In my case, like I certainly, I'm sitting here back in the pandemic, and I think I don't know if I had left my corporate job at that point, but I certainly was thinking like I'd like to be a filmmaker, and I'd like to write a screenplay and make it into a film, even a short film. Yeah. So I thought, okay, well, one of the things, I wrote a children's book once because I wanted to be a children's book illustrator back in New York. And this guy, my sister was working at Harcourt and Brace in San Diego, and I met with their, I guess, producer, or I don't know, some director of their children's book thing. And he looked at my work and he goes, well, you obviously can draw and have like an interesting, you have an interesting style that would work for children, but he goes, what I don't see is consistency. Like I don't see that you can take me from page 1 to page 26, hold the style throughout, and actually develop the character, develop the story with that style. So he goes, don't just write a story, doesn't matter what it is, and then just illustrate that story and put that in your portfolio. It was good advice, right? It's a good exercise. So I wrote this story about my daughter going to get checked for the mail in Vestry Street. Remember, I used Vestry Street and Michael's Muffins and the cobblestones, and like I very, very much used Tribeca as the setting. And it's a silly, sweet story. My daughter's in it. The dog is in it. The pugs are in it. But it certainly wasn't like, it wasn't Where the Wild Things Are. You know what I mean? So like, I was like, I'd finished it. I did the thing. It wasn't like, I wouldn't have given myself an A+ on the illustration consistency.
The thing about like that whole genre, like you go, like the picture book genre, if you go to the library or a bookstore and you just start like perusing what has been published, there's so much that's so mediocre.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Or worse than mediocre. You're just like, I would say like 60% or more is just like, it's so bland, or like the stories are dumb. Yeah. The illustrations are sort of okay. Like there's so much that gets published in that genre that's, you just go, huh. I can, it almost makes you think like the barrier to entry into this can't be that high, because most of this work is not actually that good.
Right. And I do think like a lot of other, things, it's, you're winning the lottery if you have a Where the Wild Things Are. Like there's just like,
well, I mean, like that's like, there's that tier of book, right? And then there's some tier below that where there's a lot of really pretty good stuff. And like good, where you're just like, I really like this, and then there's, the people that you wouldn't aren't the first person you would think of, but like a Lane Smith, right? Like,
Oh, right.
there's
Yeah.
there's a bunch of stuff where, at that level where you're just like, this is, they're not household names like Maurice Sendak, but
they've written
beloved stuff.
20 books and people have bought them.
And it's high quality, and it's just like, it's recognizably great, even if it's not household names. And then there's like the long tail of just meh. It's not even it's like meh. You know what I mean?
Oh,
anyway, so what were you saying about this project, about the Vestry Street thing? You were like, how to
all I was saying
keep playing it out? Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, let me say that when we were once at NYU, they had like an artist. And I was always hovering. My parents were like, "We're really worried if you get a BFA. Why don't you get like a more commercial or saleable degree, and then like take courses and like electives." So I did. I got a communications degree that let me take tons of creative electives.
Yeah.
Like, I even took jazz guitar and like film animation and stuff. But I used to think like, dude, I don't know, am I an artist, right? So I went to this a craft fair, or I guess like an art fair in Washington Square Park. I feel like you might even have been walking there with me. But so it was like springtime and we were walking through. And I felt bad to say this, but imagine like laser cut wood with like a duck scene. Like someone like made a drawing of a duck and then they like cut it out of burned it into a piece of wood, and then you put it on your mantelpiece, or like there's a clock or like that kind of shit, kind of like crafty stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then I go to like the Fourth Avenue Street Fair in Tucson. Twice a year we have this street fair, and you just walk through hundreds and hundreds of booths of people who are devoted to their art or craft. I'm using air quotes, which is mean.
Yeah.
And something about it, like, it's like a Dementor from Harry Potter, like sucks the life out of me. Like I feel just bad about the world as like a place where anyone could make anything of value artistically, or that no one would see it if you did, or like there's just this feel. That feeling. It's, I don't know if it's like it's almost like an artistic nihilism because you've seen so much mediocrity or so much.
Yeah, and well, like there's a lot packed into that, I think too, because there, like for me, when I see that, there's this feeling that like all of these people might be really talented, but they've like they're like, everybody's struggling with that. Like, I remember my dad struggling with this. Like, how do I make money at making stuff, right? And it's like, he liked to make, and he liked to experiment with all kinds of things, right? But then just that question of like, how do I actually survive doing this? And it's like, he kept trying to find that one thing he could sell at the craft fair. And like, there was no love in it at all. It was just kind of like, it was like, oh, I'm pretty good at making candle snuffers. Maybe people will buy those. Oh, they didn't really like the candle snuffers. I'll try, you know what I mean? And then you're in this game of like, you're out of your, and I don't know. I always had this sort of inner battle about whether my dad was more of a craftsman or more of an artist, right? I mean, like, he was a really talented craftsman. He could make a lot of really beautiful stuff. And he thought about materials more like a craftsman than an artist, I think. Like, his stuff was more craft than idea. Like, he wasn't playing with ideas. He was playing with media. And for the most part. And so I think he's more of a craftsman, but like, he was a really gifted craftsman, and he could do a lot of stuff with a lot of different materials. And he had really creative, beautiful ways of mixing different materials, precious stuff with non-precious, and plastics with organic things. And it just like really, I'm just impressed by his work. But yeah, just that. So there's that thing when you walk through this craft fair, it's like, it just feels like a weird dead end of these people. Like, they've hit the dead end.
Right.
And maybe some of them started at the dead end. But like, when I imagine how they got there doing that thing, like, it feels like they're at the dead end of art and craft somehow. And so you're walking through the desert, the dead end.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I don't, I used to, and in this particular story, I'm not tooting my own horn, but I used to hang out with these two artists in Tucson that were, fairly accomplished oil painters. Like, they were further along. Certainly I was learning how to oil paint and stuff at that point. I was more of a photo film dude, and maybe
Yeah.
still am. So we would go together for lunch. We'd drink some whiskey at lunch, and then we'd go down to the Tucson Museum of Art if they had a new show. And we'd walk through the new show, and they would, what I'm going to use the term, they would sort of diss the pieces. Like they'd stand there and just, like a crit, like they would just say mean things about the pieces. And I used to get like increasingly discouraged by hanging out with him in this context. And I would say, maybe what works for me is if I sort of like using I statements in therapy, like if I just say like, the piece isn't moving me the way I think the artist intended. Like I'm not connecting with their, like how E.B. Glenn would say, like you're sort of putting it on this in this other place, and then we're actually communicating through the artifact. And I would say, so that's really the failure. It's just that other people might walk along and be like, oh my God, this piece is amazing. And I would just be like, I just don't, I'm not connecting with it, right? Like it's not, and I'm owning 50% of that failure because I don't have the what does he call it? The ordering of experience to meet theirs.
Yeah.
And so,
I don't know, go ahead, sorry.
Well, so I was going to say, like, I understand that there's a point at which an art critic who's really schooled in what is good art and what is not good art can make a sort of an assessment of a piece. But it felt like the exercise that we were doing was simply dragging me down, like walking through the Fourth Avenue Street Fair. Like I ended up coming away like less inspired, and so I didn't enjoy that process. What were you going to say?
Yeah, like kind of it just sort of neutralized any joy or enthusiasm you had, like by comment. It sort of chipped away. Yeah.
Right.
No, I know what you mean. It's interesting with visual art. Like when I think of watching television, for example, like there's something about like there's writing that is just recognizably excellent. When you're watching a show and you go like, this is just really good. And it's hard to know what that is, exactly what makes it good. Like, I think that I've heard, we talked about Tony Gilroy a while back, and, like when Mark Maron asked him, well, what are some of the problems that you've ended up fixing in a screenplay that kind of like landed on your desk that was that was a draft that somebody asked you to kind of fix? And, he said one of the things he pointed out, he's like, when a character's IQ changes scene by scene, right? Like, and that's just something like a good writer would recognize. Like, oh, this character isn't smart enough to do this thing that suddenly they're doing in this scene. Like, they haven't been. So then you're, as a writer, you're like, I need to kill that scene, or I need to change them earlier to make them smarter or whatever, right? Like
have them go through some kind of like struggle to lift themselves up to the point where they could actually see that or say that. Right.
So with writing, there's a kind of consistency, there's an attention to detail that comes through when something's really good. And a lot of times you recognize it when it's just not good. Like you're watching a show and it just doesn't grab you, and you go and you sort of like abandon it after episode 3 or something. You're like, that was pretty good, right? But then there's other things that you watch where you just go, I can't wait for the next one. And it's hard to really articulate what the difference is between those two things, like what makes that show great. But I have an easier time with that for just like dismissing something written as like, that's just not good writing. It's just not well written. I have an easier time with that than visual art for some reason, or other media like that. I don't know about you, but like, looking at paintings and hearing people just diss the painting, it almost, for me in that context, their critique feels to me like, just because I'm not an expert, I like at that level where I don't feel like I personally am able to objectively recognize good versus not good with painting in a lot of cases. Because if I was, I'd go and I'd look at Jackson Pollock and I'd go like, it's just throw up, like he vomited paint on a canvas. Like, why is this good, right? You know what I mean? So I don't trust myself as much with visual art. So like when I'm next to those people, I would have the same reaction as you. I'd just be like, I kind of like that painting, and these guys are dissing it. And I was enjoying it, but now I'm like, my joy my enjoyment of this painting is now like polluted by, by that, by their sort of like commentary. Yeah, I don't know why. Like with writing though, I feel like I'm more objective. I trust myself, my eye, so to speak, more to make a more objective kind of judgment of the thing. Do you think that's the difference between me or like the viewer, me or you, or is it something distinct about the media, like writing versus visual art?
That's a great question. One thing while you were talking, I was thinking of was, so this Taylor Sheridan Landman thing, this sort of what I would call the keystone scene in, I don't know, episode 2 or something, where he's talking to the lawyer, and he does that explanation, and the character, obviously, he doesn't want to be, he's forced to do this job because he lost all his money in the downturn, right? So he's doing the job. He feels trapped. He hates it.
Yeah.
He's told by his boss, figure out how to lease these fields and frack them because there's the only way to get the oil out. And when she complains and says, isn't that, and he does go through solar and wind, and he just has this like incredible library of knowledge about like the carbon footprint of each thing, and the, the concrete pad takes this and the balsa wood in the wings of the wind turbines, and it comes from the Amazon, and like he knows all this shit, and he basically, what he says is he's saying this universal thing that everyone on the planet is trapped into. We're addicted to petroleum, and the way he sort of says it, and he's this grumpy dude who's trapped in this job, but he is able to make this case.
He makes such a clear argument for that. Yeah.
But it all of a sudden, it's not about like just him and the lawyer anymore. It's like about all of us. And that's something that blows me away, is when someone's able to tell a story that sets
But they
us
have
up.
to have the right characters to say that in the right moment, right? Otherwise it just comes across as like
preaching.
Like, oh, now the writer is trying to preach something at me, right?
And that's what I think is so brilliant. He led us down this we went through a bunch of fields and over the log and through the, and then when we ended up in this dirt patch, he kicked us in the teeth with that monologue. And it's like, damn, man, I'm really impressed.
Especially too, when you have like, so there's that feeling of like having your own assumptions about things challenged, right?
Yeah.
Or broadened. Yeah. I love that feeling.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of different ways that can happen. Like you might have a very sort of simplistic idea of like, oil bad, right? Or whatever, right? And so then to have somebody sort of blow that wider open like that, to add a kind of nuance to it. And sometimes the nuance is useful because you're like, oh shit, like that's the counter argument to like I have this belief and I haven't, like, my belief has been pretty solid, but now my belief feels a little shaky because I've run up against this really great counter argument. And so like, then you're faced with like, I need to flesh out my own thoughts about this thing. I still want to make my own case that is against what they are saying, but like now I have, it's almost like inspiration. Now I am like it's something blooming in your mind. It's like, now I have all of this other stuff that I need to be able to challenge. Yeah. And sometimes it uproots your whole belief. You're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Like that, I was wrong this whole time. And so either of those feelings can be really just like a fantastic feeling. And it can be really simple too. Like when I'm watching something, one of my great pleasures in a character is when a character has their epiphany, right? When a character makes you have an epiphany about your own assumptions about like who they are, and I don't know. I love that stuff when you're just, your assumptions and beliefs are basically like shaken somehow by something you're watching. It's such a great pleasure.
One of those. So when I back in like, I don't know, 1994, there was this Navy scientist who started something called OTEC, Ocean Thermal Energy Conversion, and basically you need like a 24 to 27 degree Fahrenheit differential between on site to generate like a steam engine, that you need that kind of differential. So he figured out that on the ocean floor you've got this really cold water, and then on the surface you've got solar gain heated water in like the tropics, let's say. and you can. It's a complicated system, but you can basically put like chlorine gas into a closed system, boil it, recapture it, and boil it again.
So it's basically like creates like a cycle between the two temperatures or something.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine if you brought it up to the surface, it would boil, and then you bring it back down, and so like you're moving. I don't know exactly.
Like as it cools, it falls or whatever.
Yeah,
like that kind of thing.
And you can. He was able to, off of the coast of Hilo in a Navy destroyer, he was able to generate 3% net gain. Which doesn't sound like a lot. The other thing was that he was able to generate desalinated water. As a byproduct of the process, right?
Oh, wow.
So I read about it, and I was like, I told my wife at the time, I was like, I would like to go there and like sweep his office floor to like, I just love the idea of working in alternative energy, and it's such a cool idea. And it would work really well in the tropical zone where everyone where people actually need electricity and they don't have power plants. So anyway, there were problems with it, and it was really expensive to scale it up, and it was, I think, maybe fragile in a storm, but so it hasn't like made it big.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. So anyway, so my thought was like, I've had that interest for a very long time. My mom would say, "Are you ever going to get a PhD?" And I'd be like, if I was going to go back to school, I'd like to study the science that would allow me to work in the alternative energy industry. Batteries, like, whatever. It's like maybe the tidal generators and stuff. Anyway, so a long time ago, this seems like a long-winded story, but this is one of those broken my, so I thought that if we switch to a hydrogen-based economy, hydrogen is a battery, it's not a fuel, because you have to put energy into it to turn it into a fuel. But you could use solar to desalinate water, to knock off the oxygen. So I thought, oh my God, if we just switch to a hydrogen economy, Greenland and New Zealand would be like the Saudi Arabia.
Like the byproduct is water, basically.
Yeah, it's like so clean. Turns out, my wife is working on a grant with the Department of Energy. She's been staying up really late ever since Friday, working on this hydrogen project. Turns out that hydrogen is way worse than we thought. Like you have to keep it very cold when you store it. So that takes a lot of energy.
So that takes a lot of energy, yeah.
As you pump it out of the container, this whole physics thing happens where it starts to heat up, and you have to, it can blow up if you do it too fast. And it's just like, if it leaks, which it leaks really easily, it's the worst greenhouse gas there is. Worse than propane, methane, carbon dioxide. So what I thought 7 years ago or 12 years ago was that we just need to switch to a hydrogen economy, bite the bullet, and we'll all be driving hydrogen fuel cell cars. That's true.
That's the depressing thing about all these things.
Such a bummer.
You hit the, there's like, I think it was, what's her name? I'll think of the writer later. She writes a lot of stuff for the New Yorker, and she's written a few books, but she's kind of a social critic type writer. She wrote about, she practiced did a bunch of minimum wage jobs and kind of wrote about that. And Elizabeth Kolbert, I think, maybe, with a K. I'll find it. But anyway, she wrote a piece in the New Yorker maybe a year ago, and it was just about the 7 substances, that she kind of just looked at all of these things that sort of if you want to shift to solar, she kind of just talked about it's cool, except, right? And then hydrogen, it really seems amazing, except this, right? And it's just electric battery technology. She went through kind of each thing. It was just there kind of is no answer. They all have, as soon as you reach any scale with any of them, you're causing, untold destruction. It's just trading one kind of apocalypse for another almost, and it's so depressing.
There's a terrible, terrible story where Europe, it might have been 10 or 12 years ago, Europe, a lot of European countries said, we're going to mandate that our power needs to be generated by alternative fuels by this percentage, just arbitrarily, 23% by next year, right?
Yeah.
The fastest way to scale up was to use basically soybean oil.
Oh, no.
Oh no, palm oil.
Yeah. Oh,
So then
shit.
they went to
Yeah.
Indonesia and they started clear cutting the
Yeah, that
rainforest
kind of
to
thing.
grow palm oil
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
And then, so it was like it was the law
There's
of
so many
unintended
things like that.
consequences.
Like
It was
everything is, like when it's like, oh, we should. I don't know. I just remember like quinoa was really popular, and then I remember hearing like there was some like clear cutting that happened because like in Central America or wherever where they grow quinoa, it was like, oh, quinoa is profitable now. So it's like the governments down there are so corrupt, and they can kind of just like.
Yeah.
And they can just be like, oh, fuck, it's a quinoa boom right now. So we're just going to mow down all these people's, like, we're just going to, like, seize land from, you know what I mean? It's like all these,
God.
it always happens, it feels like,
totally.
even with
That's
something
true.
as niche as quinoa. But
People are dicks, man.
it's
People are just
it's so
dicks.
depressing. Yeah. Well, then there's the other thing that happens, too. Like, I remember, so some years ago, so the other obstacle sometimes where it does feel like, oh, here's a thing that's really promising. You wonder how much like capitalism itself is kind of the obstacle to some progress on some of these things, right? Like I think, so there's a book, I think it's called Breakthrough. It's about the guy who wrote it. He's a Chinese American guy, but it's about kind of the difference between China and the USA in terms of like political, social difference, kind of key economic, political, and social differences. And he summarizes it as China is run by engineers, and the U.S. is run by lawyers. And so he kind of goes through the upsides and downsides of that. But like basically his premise is that in China you can kind of just if the government decides like it wants to switch to solar, it can kind of just make that happen.
Yeah.
Like it can just get it done. Damn the consequences. So like he kind of says like that's the upside. You can get stuff done really quickly like that. The downside is you end up with like the Cultural Revolution and stuff because it's like there's no sort of obstacle. There's no mechanism. If the government has really bad ideas, they can get it done just as easily as really good ideas.
Mao Zedong created a famine in the 50s that killed 23 million people because he wanted to switch to modern
Exactly. And so that's happened at different, like that's the extreme, but like slightly less extreme examples have happened throughout China's modern history, right? And then in the U.S., meanwhile, you can't get shit done because, government and capitalism and lawyers have every way of stopping everything. And it could be government lawyers in environmental studies, or it could just be like corporations that like lobby and say, hey, like this is going to threaten the oil and gas industry, so we can't do this, right? So we're gonna stop it through legal means, all of our different legal mechanisms. So you wonder sometimes too when there is some sort of breakthrough, what are those other forces? Like it might not be some limit of the technology that's slowing it down. It might be, or like the cost of scaling. You'll hear that. Oh, it was really expensive to scale it. Well, yeah, it was really expensive to scale the oil and gas industry too, right? Like that was it took. It was just a political will thing, right? And maybe just like so like you have to dig for fucking oil and then you have to refine it, and it's like that, like to scale that into an industry came with massive costs. So to scale anything, it costs a lot of money.
One thing they say in Landman that kind of blew me away is he's explaining that he goes, we need to operate the extraction industry between $60 a barrel and 83. What we learned was when it went to 143, it caused a whole bunch of wars and people got angry at the pump, and we like regime change, and like we switched governments. And he goes, if it goes below 60, we can't make any money, most of us.
Yeah.
So we have to find, and again, the demand, like during the pandemic, there was no demand.
Yeah.
So people were lit. If you had an empty oil tanker, they would pay you $250,000 to come get some oil and just store it in the tanker. That happened during the pandemic because there's it's not very flexible. Like this, as you said, it's scaled up so big, and it's trying to meet the demand.
You can't just turn it off. You can't turn off the tap, right?
No. And like Putin, one of Putin's biggest problems is that Chevron and Shell like pulled out when the war started with Ukraine, and he doesn't have the technology or the skill set to keep his Arctic things running smoothly. Yeah. And if Ukraine bombs any of his refining things, it's coming out of the Arctic and it doesn't stop. There's nowhere to put it. Like
I see.
You know what I mean? Like you've crude oil just pouring out and you can't turn it
Right.
off really. It's such an interesting problem. Like basically it's like, I wouldn't want to try to go to bed and sleep soundly if that was my job, is to keep the oil flowing and not have it back up, or that sounds like a horrible. That sounds like a nightmare scenario.
Totally. You know what? This is a weird side tangent, but I was thinking about just like solar for some reason, and thinking like in a place like you live, Tucson, where and if you drive by like a solar array out in the desert, it's so upsetting in a way. There's one here in Richmond, California, and you sort of feel like we have all these surfaces already. You have rooftops, you have roads. Like I remember, for years I donated to this solar roads project that I don't think ever went anywhere. But it was the idea was like we should use highways turn highways into solar, like use solar panels as the surface of the highway of all of our highways, right? Like anyway, so these things where and so again, you wonder like how much is capitalism slowing that kind of thing down? Does it threaten some? Does it not get bigger because there's some
Have you ever
oil exec who's going to lose money?
Have you ever those conspiracy theories about like Tesla, not the car company, but the original, the scientist, the
Tesla
physicist.
versus not Einstein. Edison,
Edison,
that whole thing. Yeah.
Like the whole idea that it was like direct current is less, there's less friction in the line.
Yeah, exactly that kind of thing. Like I don't know enough about that to know,
but
to know what's true there versus what's myth. But yeah.
And then like you hear about or see these like they stay in this sort of like the fringes of the public consciousness. These sort of like scientists who in their backyard invented this perpetual motion machine, but was found dead, like, with a bullet. And like it was like the oil and gas industry murdered him, like.
Right. Like I'm not typically conspiracy, oriented, but like you do wonder. There are forces, and I don't know that, like I never go so far as to say like connect A and B and Z and go, oh, this is like this happened for sure. But like, there are. It could just be standard sort of inertia they run into. That's sort of what I imagine. It's just like they run into like it becomes a slog and a little bit of a legal slog, and it just like they run out of money at some point. And like, oh, I guess we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, and I think
it's a more mundane kind of way of shutting things down rather than just killing the guy and
Yeah, totally. I mean that. Like if you think of some of those conspiracy theories are born from, and then morph their way out of real world events. An interesting story is the story, and I don't remember his name, but the guy who invented television, like the cathode ray tube.
Yeah.
Like the big boys like RCA, Victor, he had a patent on it, and they just didn't start to manufacture using the licensing. Until the patent expired, and he ended up dying a pauper. But then they Then they made television in the 50s.
They used his idea or whatever, yeah.
And it was like one of those things where it's like, how did that happen? Like, how did someone who invented something so cataclysmically useful to humans? How did he end up like? Why didn't some like venture capitalists like approach him and be like, let's fucking build a factory and make our own fucking televisions? You know what I mean? Like, why do we? Like, it seems odd to me that could happen, and maybe that's the seed of the idea that some dude invents like this solution to power or power consumption, and that's why someone shoots him in the back of the head, because we just can't yet wrap our heads around changing out of the oil and gas. Do you remember what was it, the BP disaster in the Gulf?
Yeah.
And so BP, what's that, the Deep Horizon? The Deep Horizon.
Yeah, Deep Horizon, yeah.
I think about it as like a national.
I remember that, like that felt like I remember sort of feeling like the almost like daily pain from that, like just like aware in some like latent level, like a steady underlying awareness of like there's just oil just pumping out of this thing into the, like when are they going to stop it?
It was a global trauma.
I wasn't even watching the news that much to see like when are they going to stop it. It was more just like I could, in my mind's eye, I could just see it underwater, just pumping oil into the ocean. And I remember just being like, kind of like, I don't know, feeling the pain of that every day.
Do you remember watching
in my guts?
I think it was like a global international trauma, like that we all witnessed this horrible thing. And I also remember the rescue mission.
Ongoing, like it just was like, God, when are they going to shut it off?
Yeah. But there was this really like live on TV, as seen on TV. There was this engineer who brought in this cap system, and they like lowered it over it, and everyone was like, cross your fingers, and then it worked. And we were like, oh, what a relief! You know, it just was such a relief. But it also made us realize that how vulnerable all of the off-sea rigs are, you know, because it's like, you know, so one of the things in Landman that happens, and I don't want to, you know, I mean, I'm in season 2 that just came out, so I don't want to give away the ship or whatever that's called.
Spoiler
alert, yeah. But they come across, they're told to go look at some old wells. It's in the Permian Basin, and basically they're trying to figure out ways to extract more from wells that have, with traditional methods, just grown drier or not profitable. They're just like they're producing 12 barrels a day, and it doesn't pay for the It's about $10 million to re-drill a well. That's a lot, you know. So you got to make that money back by selling, you know, a lot per day. So anyway, so they go to look at these wells, and hydrogen sulfide gas. I did not know what this shit is.
Okay.
It's just like a poisonous gas that has to do with like
that just comes out of the earth when you drill an oil well.
It's just like present when there's oil. And like it can be, and it's like if you breathe it, so they wear like alarms on their chest, and when it detects the gas, they have like 30 seconds to put on a gas mask, you know, so they have to carry them with them. And it sort of settles, it's heavier than air, so it settles in pockets, like if you're walking around, you know. I did not know about, I knew that like the Deepwater Horizon, there's a bunch of accidents in the show, and the Deepwater Horizon was simply, there's all this flammable gases that can explode if you like create a spark. And you're like bringing metal things down into other metal things and swinging
friction,
them. And,
metal,
oh my
metal,
God, or banging, clank, boom, you have a spark. That's like how the Deepwater Horizon happens. And there's not really like a way to avoid the spark. So they often will flare off, like you see them flaring off the methane. There's like a blue flame all the time, you know, because they're trying to burn off so that it won't explode, you know, because it builds up if you. So anyway, you're looking at it and you're like, oh my God, oil extraction is so fucking dangerous. It's like there's like 29 things that can go wrong on an oil rig on land and kill people. And then you move it into the ocean. And you're like, what
then you have storms and...
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And if anything goes wrong, you have to send ships out there to get the people. It's just like, it seems like a disaster.
And then you have countries like Japan that like would like, you know, we're going to go all nuclear. Right. And then you have tsunamis.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oof. Well, right on the ocean. You know, you know, there was a guy, I got a friend of the family who used to work for a clothing company that wanted to go green. And they would send him to these eco conventions to just talk to scientists, and he wanted to find out where they would invest to greenwash themselves, right? So he came back from one conference and he said, you know, went to like 12 talks about the future, and he goes, the mini nuclear power plants that are in submarines, that if we had them decentralized throughout a city, like in San Francisco, let's say you had 20 of them, and they were housed, you know, protected, and they had little, but that would be the cleanest, safest way to do it. He goes,
isn't there some new one with like ceramic beads or something?
Yeah, there's pebble ceramic technology. There's much lower temperature. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of new things. And we didn't develop any of it because we banned it after 3 Mile Island.
Right.
So like it's South Africa, France, they have this technology. Anyway, so he said, the downside is if you scale that up, then you have, just imagine like Chipotle on every strip corner, right? Like imagine that. And then imagine that the waste that's created can be used in a dirty bomb. But by any asshole with a SUV, right?
So that's
So he's like, the thing is, it's the perfect solution, but there's
But
enough bad actors on the
every
planet that
perfect
would just...
solution has like a terrible potential side effect. Yeah.
He was like, imagine scaling it up across India. There was one point where the Taliban, or not the Taliban, but like Al Qaeda or someone was on the move in Pakistan, and they had busted. They ended up 3 miles away from the gates of their nuclear arsenal. Like they were down the boulevard 3 miles away, and then they were stopped. But it was like, damn, man, like that. If we, you know what I mean? Like if they decide to send them to India to kill Hindus, and it's like India decides to level Pakistan. Like you realize like how nuclear things are so problematic if you scale it up and everyone has them.
Right.
Because then the waste and it just seems...
There was I don't remember where I heard this. There was a show on like the Discovery Channel some years ago that was like, if Earth Without People.
Huh.
Sorry, I got frozen here for a second. I didn't freeze on your side, did I?
Just a little glitchy.
Okay. So it was called Earth Without People. And I think it was just like, if all people disappeared from the Earth, like 100 years, what Earth would be like 50 years from now, 100 years, like 1,000 years, right? It might have been that or something. It was something, the premise was basically that. Like if human beings died out, either vanished completely or like were severely diminished by like an asteroid or a huge a crazy pandemic or something. Somebody pointed out that, like, if there wasn't somebody running all of the nuclear power plants that currently exist on the planet, like, they'd all go into meltdown eventually. And so like, it might have been a sci-fi thing, but basically the idea was like, like, if we were faced with, if we all went underground, right, like for some pandemic or asteroid or whatever, like one of the things we'd have to figure out how to deal with on the surface of this Earth is like, how do you shut down all the nuclear reactors that already exist safely?
Yeah, that's true.
So because like if people just disappeared, like they would potentially all just go into meltdown mode at some point. So that's kind of crazy. And they were just saying that like there's enough of them on the Earth that it would be like nuclear war, essentially. There's enough of them on the Earth to cause essentially nuclear winter.
Wow. Yeah.
If they all melted down. And they all would if nobody was managing them. I never thought about that.
That is crazy. What's wild is we grew up very close to 3 Mile Island.
Yeah.
Like I remember
driving by it sometimes, when you would drive across
we
Pennsylvania.
were in the hockey bus. Like we went to play some prep school in hockey.
It's like near Harrisburg, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Kind of
we're out a little, but even closer. But Harrisburg's actually pretty close to Philly. But
Harrisburg's close. Yeah.
But so we were like over there in the hockey bus. Remember those Mercedes? They were like red with white Mercedes buses. Those little mini buses, short buses.
Yeah, we were like such a bougie school with our Mercedes buses.
Totally, and they painted them the conjugal love colors, like red.
Yeah, and, that sort of dark red. Yeah.
Yeah, and. Which, by the way, just super side note, like we went to this super bougie school, but we used to have our gym clothes where there was like a white shirt with a red emblem, like a logo. And then we had these quote unquote, I'm using air quotes for those on the radio. They were red shorts, but they had been washed like so many times that they had really, really lost a lot of the color. So one day, one of the guys in our class, I can't remember who, he just goes, the elephant in the room is that these shorts are actually pink. They're just fucking pink shorts, and we're all pretending that they're red. We keep calling them red, but they're just pink. And I was like,
that's funny.
Damn, man, it's true. Like they really were pink shorts.
Yeah, that's funny.
By the way, I found a photo of myself from 1985.
Okay.
And I was wearing... It was like, I don't know if it was, what's that French company, like Limited Express or something, but it was a football shirt with like a cut off at above the belly button, 3/4 sleeves of brushed cotton, and then it was terry cloth body.
Nice.
Pink.
Sweet.
The whole thing was pink. And it had like a tie.
Man.
It had a tie string at the waist. And I remember just thinking when I found it and bought it, I was like, this is the coolest fucking shirt anyone has ever worn in their entire life. And like looking back on that, I'm like, how could I have thought that? Like, what
Make that your Christmas card, man.
Was that because Ronald Reagan was the president and we were he was eating jelly beans all day long? Like, why did we think that was cool? Like, it just seems...
I mean, that's every fashion era pretty much, right? Almost.
I mean, a black T-shirt and khaki pants is pretty much...
Never
goes out of
timeless.
style. Yeah. Jack Kerouac wore that shit.
But even with pants, it's like high-waisted, low-waisted, baggy, tapered.
Mom
you know what I mean?
Oof,
like,
mom jeans.
Yeah, like baggy pants are back, right? If you look at women's pants, they're like the big baggy ones are back, high-waisted baggy pants. And for so long, it was like low-waisted, tight jeans, right? So like, but if you wear the tight jeans now, you go like, oh, it's like, what are you, in the 90s?
13 years ago, I started being partners with this woman who was really into fashion. She was from LA. And she came into my world, which I was like a divorced guy. I could wear whatever the fuck I wanted. I was wearing these like one or two sizes too big Prana pants. They were like hiking pants, but they were like really baggy. And what I liked about them was I could rock climb in them. I could play hacky sack. Like I could lift my foot and not feel restricted. Right.
Yeah.
So she comes into town. She comes to live with me, and she literally gives all of my baggy pants away without my knowledge, and then bought me like skinny jeans. And I was just like, I feel so claustrophobic. Like I can't move. If I lift my knee, it kind of grabs at my inner groin. And like, I'm like, why would she goes, but they look great. And I'm like, I don't care how they fucking look. They feel terrible.
I had like a bad moment with those kind of jeans recently. Not recently, a few years ago when I was running to catch a ferry boat. And like I had to leap over this like chain barrier. Yeah. And it was just like my leg hit the restriction on my jeans and just my foot didn't lift quite high enough, right? And I clipped to the top of the chain and I like stumbled into the crowd, like a total dramatic stumble. And it was all because of the fucking, exactly what you're describing. The jeans that were just a little bit too tight. I couldn't, like, it just restricted my leap just enough.
Maybe that's the lowest prime of the tension between form versus function, like Republicans versus Democrats at the beginning of America. Like there's like form versus function, like people who are willing to give up function to look good. And there's those of us who are willing to just like focus on or maximize function.
It's like safety versus freedom kind of thing.
Safety versus freedom. That tension is constantly pulling and tug of war in the planet, you know? Right.
Yeah. Hey, I want to return to, we should wrap this up, but I just wanted to return to one thing we were talking about earlier. I want, like the idea of not finishing, like I think we had a good talk about like creative process and stuff. But this thing about like working for a while on something and then not finishing it, like there's part of me that thinks like part of what makes you want to create something in the first place is that it's in you and it needs to come out of you, right?
Sure.
Like you're trying to explore, you have a question that you're trying to explore or an idea that you're trying to like experiment with, right? And there is a thing that sometimes happens, I feel like, where it's like it runs its course. It's like, oh, I played with that idea. Like you didn't, even if you didn't make anything, you know, quote unquote, for the world, you know, that you didn't put anything out there for other people, like you did it. The thing that drove you to do it has run its course. Like you satisfied that urge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's part of me that's like, is the goal really to make something for the world? Or is it like, as a creative person, what is the actual goal? Is the actual goal to satisfy that urge that's in you to make the thing? And sometimes you satisfy that by not, even if you didn't quote unquote finish it, like you finished exploring the question that caused you to do that thing in the first place. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's true.
So I don't know. Like, there's part of me that's like, if you didn't put it out there in the world, like, is that a failure? Well, I don't know. I don't know exactly what's that creative engine is. Just like, you know, like if the engine, it's in you and it came out of you, and the question is resolved now. The itch is scratched.
It is.
Anyway, so that's a thought.
No, and this. So when back to when my parents were like, hey, get a degree that's more saleable. They didn't use the word saleable. I think they said practical or something.
Marketable or practical.
I think they said practical. And my parents weren't artists themselves and didn't.
Right.
They only knew Uncle Nishan, and he seemed to be struggling. So anyway.
Yeah.
So they were nervous, but anyway. So we had to take 4 core classes about communications, and the very first one. We learn about the inventor of the communication model, which we all know as like the transmitter, the receiver, a channel. There's noise in the channel. There's a feedback loop, right? That model. And I remember being like, damn, when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, that's like an art that sort of, in a way, captures what an artistic creation, putting it out into the world, and then there's a feedback loop, and like, you're transmitting information from you to a piece or gallery that then other people can interact with, and then there's a feedback loop, right? And even the noise in the channel, like there's like interference or noise or things that cause the transmission to be abruptly stopped or whatever it is. Like that whole model works for an artistic creation, kind of like. And I remember. Applying it to like personal growth and identity work. I remember being at a Sanskrit lecture where, and I was grieving. I was going through my divorce at the time. I was like really struggling with like, who am I? Like, why do I feel so kind of like lost because of the divorce? Like, and I was searching for sort of personal identity meaning, right?
Yeah.
And one thing that the guy said was, he goes, every unit of information that returns to you through the feedback loop, a great failure that many of us make is that we think that information is primed to help us change ourselves. Like to like, I don't like you because you're, I don't know, too bossy or something, right? So you hear that as a feedback from like a boss or something, right? And then we think like, oh, that information, it would be best used to refine or redefine myself, right? And in some ways, he said, the goal is to get to a place where that information, the only valuable information contained in the feedback loop is simply, was my message received? Now, again, in this tantric model of like this sort of sin, what was your target, and you shoot an arrow at the target, you have to have a target. Like you have to have done the work. You can't just be like, I showed up, I got out of bed, and I want to be a dick. Like you have to have like, I want to try to be this, right? And have thought about out of the range of possible things, I can use my caloric energy for this. And you transmit your caloric energy in the form of your actions and interactions with people and a creation of an art object, let's say a book, and then the feedback loop is just, was my message received? And if it wasn't, you could, a couple of options. You could send it again. You could turn the volume up. You could find a different channel. That's a big one. Like for people who are struggling with artists, like maybe you're just in the wrong place. Like maybe you, like I remember I had a girlfriend who was a folk musician, and she loved to play like twice a week at this bar on 4th Avenue. And it was a bunch of frat boys sitting around who at their frat house, they would listen to Bob Marley and drink beer and talk. And they were just talking really loudly and drinking beer. And she was playing these very soft, sort of like Iron and Wine-esque songs. And I was like, she's just in the wrong place. Like she should be in like Austin City Limits or like PBS special. You know what I mean? Like people who paid money to sit in a chair and listen to the songs and like want to like think of them as poems. Like just, so in some ways like change the channel is one of the options in this model. And what blew me away was, and I again, like I don't have all the answers. It doesn't 100% work for me because I don't necessarily know exactly what I want. That the thing that I'm trying to transmit is worthy. Like I'm the gatekeeper there. Like I'm the one who is.
I guess like the question I'm asking is like there's a level on which I don't even think of it as wanting to transmit anything. It's like I have a question that's eating at me, and I want to work on that. I want to explore it, experiment with it, figure it out. Right? Like it has nothing to do with transmitting anything to anybody else. It's like the thing that is in me is interesting, and I want to work with it for a while. Like so there's I guess, but anyway, continue what
No,
you're
no,
saying.
that's a really interesting point. And I could apply that to, for instance, I've written 35 songs, and I think of them as like me there's like therapy because I can't process emotions as efficiently as I would like to be able to, but I can if I like write it in a song,
Yeah. Yeah. And so like, there's a part of me that's like, well, I failed because I didn't finish it. I didn't put it out there. It didn't become a thing that I like tried to put into the world and get people to get an audience for it or whatever. Like I didn't get to that point. So like I failed. But then there's another part of me. It's like, no, like I lost interest in it for a reason. Like it ran its course and that's fine. And that's totally fine. Yeah.
And in your analogy and in my analogy about the songs, and then the communications model analogy, literally is the next step is, do you want to try to get your show made into a TV show, your paintings put on a gallery wall? Like it's literally taking it to the public. And
right.
that's where
and I don't know how to balance or figure out like to what extent I'm excusing actual failure versus like, you know what I mean? Like there's both possibilities there. And I don't know how to reconcile or balance those two possibilities. Like,
Francis Bacon famously said, "I'm hoping
two opposing thoughts." Yeah.
Francis Bacon, the painter, and I hope I'm not butchering his quote, but supposedly said, "Your job as an artist is not to discover anything, solve any problems, create any philosophies. It's simply to deepen the mystery." Which is kind of like a sweet way to just say like.
I always say questions are way more interesting than answers. So like
right?
I always appreciate. I'm one of those people that appreciates a story that has an ambiguous ending, like a show that doesn't tie everything up really neat. My wife hates that. But yeah, I always think like, I agree, deepen the mystery. I'm totally on board with that. Whatever, if that's what he said, I'm on board with that. Questions are more interesting than answers.
It's true. Do you remember the No Country for Old Men when the evil character has, he's murdered all these people and you're just like watching him drive through, spoiler alert, he's driving through the neighborhood and out of the blue, and this actually has scarred me for life. Like if I'm driving through a neighborhood that has stop signs every so often, and it's just like little suburban streets and it's quiet and no one's around, he's just driving along like and he gets T-boned, like just out of nowhere, just someone just runs a stop sign and just boom, right into the side of his door. And he gets out and he's like bleeding and he pays some kid for the shirt and then he like hobbles off. And that's the end of the film. And you're in some ways it feels to me like they're just saying, even the Grim Reaper, someone fucking T-bones him in a suburban, like if he's not paying attention, he's going to get T-boned and he's going to be bleeding and he's going to hobble off and die under a tree because he's a fucking Grim Reaper. But, like there's other Grim Reaper, like random shit. In some ways, to me, that's what they were saying, and hopefully that will happen to, I'm not going to say it out loud. Okay.
All right. Yeah, it's best.
But we should call it Satellite Haiku.
Yeah.
Love it. And let's talk. Can you stick around just for a little bit if we hit stop?
I do have a really quick first world problem this time.
Oh, cool. Nice. Let's hear it.
It's sort of in the same vein as one I said before, but our Nest thermostat here in the house is first generation Nest thermostat. And it's offline. It's not connected to the app anymore. It's connected to our internet for no apparent reason because I can't access it on the app, the Nest app or the Google Home app.
They don't support it anymore.
So what I tried to do is like, I'm gonna remove it and then reconnect it because it was like you can make it generate a code that you put in. Anyway, it wasn't doing it. It was having trouble. So I was like, all right, I'll remove it. So then it turns out that the app doesn't support the first generation thermostat anymore. No. So it's like the thing that makes the Nest like. One of the things that makes it a really useful thermostat is that you can do stuff on the app, right? Like you can create a schedule,
Wow.
So like a thermostat is something that you shouldn't and don't ever need to really replace. Like it should last 20 years. Yeah. Right? And so the idea that Google has like created this planned obsolescence into their thermostat pisses me off. So now I basically just have a thermostat. My Nest thermostat that I bought some years ago is now just a thermostat. Like
Here's
I
an
can
int-
go, I can do stuff with it on the wall like any other fucking thermostat. And it's a perfectly good thermostat. And the idea that they take this perfectly good thermostat and they make it basically useless in the app is anyway, it pisses me off. It's kind of like my wife's really perfectly good, MacBook that now can't do anything because
crazy. Yeah, they don't
because
support
it has the wrong chip in it.
You should look for and if anyone's written any open source code for you to access it remotely, with the phone or something. Because sometimes people do that when they're pissed.
Yeah.
It would be fun
so
to
that's my quick first world problem.
That is crazy. It makes me think of this. I remember watching during Obama's era, the Tea Partiers were coming out with this libertarian thing. And they were saying, the federal government shouldn't tell me that I can't be racist at my restaurant or something.
Yeah.
And their argument, I remember Rand Paul was like, yeah, like if the market should decide, like if they're racist, then, black people and people adjacent to black people won't go there and they'll feel the economic pain and they'll shift. And the government shouldn't tell them they can't be racist, right? And I was like, first of all, that's just such a, okay, but that, my point is, how the fuck, to me, it should be that you are not allowed to abandon one of your own products. Like I'm having the problem with my sound.
There should be like a minimum level of support or something. This is a Cory Doctorow. You know that guy, Cory Doctorow? Do you know him?
Yeah.
The enshittification guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he talks about like one of his big things is like being able to repair your own products. That's a thing that
right to repair. California.
The right to repair. That's like one of his whole campaigns. It's sort of adjacent to that issue.
Yeah, totally.
It's a little bit like right to repair.
It's almost like if they should provide, what I'm using right now for my Apogee Duet sound thing is I'm using an iPhone 10 because the app that runs on the iPhone 10 with the Lightning connector works perfectly. There's no bugs at all. As soon as you go to the new iPhone with the USB-C, it crashes.
Stops working. Yeah.
It crashes, and they're like, "Well, too bad. We didn't ever promise you that it would work with the USB-C."
Yeah.
And I'm like,
"Come on,
what the fuck? Come on, man!" Like, and they're like, "Well, we're not gonna put any you should buy a new one."
So it should be required that at the very least they they release open source, like they release all their old code so that it's super easy for somebody to build a solution.
Yeah. Or I bet
something
you anything
like that. Yeah.
I bet you anything. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I get that there's a technical problem that they didn't design it when USB-C wasn't around when they designed it, so they're struggling there. Satellite Haiku. Let's pull it.
Satellites? A satellite represents a journey, information gathering, this journey around the Earth.